Well, it's so good to have Colin on. How you doing today, Colin?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thank you, Keith. How are you doing?
I am waiting for the snowstorm that's about to hit, so I am a little hesitant about how happy I'm going to be in about 14 hours. So
You're all ready for it, I hope.
I'm sure we will be.
Good
I love
man.
to
Good
ask my
man.
guests this question to kind of get a chance to get to know you a little bit better and the audience
hmm
introduce yourself. What's the
hmm
best piece of advice you ever received?
Mm, good question. I'm pretty sure it would be to learn how to meditate and to be more mindful.
Mm,
Um, Now, have I listened to that advice ever since I was still? That's a different question, though, right? But that is the
that's a
best
different
piece.
question, right?
Yeah, that is the best. That's the best place to start.
So I look at your
Yeah,
bio. You've had a really
yeah.
interesting career. You
hmm
spanned a lot of different genres, a lot of different things you've done. I'm just
hmm
curious, along the way, who are some people who serve as an inspiration in your life?
Mm, boy, gosh, there's so many. Probably gonna have to go from the latest to the oldest.
Okay.
Certainly somebody like Gabor Maté, who just wrote that book called "The Myth of Normal." I think he is. I know he is an inspiration to me, and he has been for about 20 years, ever since he created or wrote that book called "When the Body Says No." So I think he's brilliant, and I'm glad that I intersected with him and get to read his work. Another one, more recent, would be a coach called Martha Beck. And Martha Beck recently wrote a book called The Way of Integrity. And it's all about living an authentic life, but living your sort of true authentic life. So I thought I found that very inspirational at kind of a key pivot moment in my life. And then the classics for me are people like Eckhart Tolle, with The Power of Now and all the work that he's done and is doing, and people like Joe Dispenza, who are sort of bridging ancient wisdom and modern science. And gosh, there's so many. I could spend the hour speaking to you about people that I find inspiring, and people like you who are out there working to make the world a better place. So I think we all have our part in that play.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's interesting because you think about the people and when they intersect in your life and
hmm
how those intersections can change your direction,
Yep.
refine your direction, hone
Yep.
your purpose in life. I remember a couple of
Mm,
years back, 10 years back or so, ran across a workshop about finding your purpose. And
mm,
I was doing okay in ministry, but it became really clear as I sat down and looked at what my purpose was supposed to be that my life was going to take a dramatic turn from where I had been going. And
right.
I still to this day remember defining that purpose has kind of clarified what the next phase of my life was supposed to be. So
Mm,
yeah, those
right.
people in those moments stand out because they do have such impact on us.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you can. There are people that are helping us change the world, and they can help you pivot, right? And so often we get stuck in our ways and our beliefs and our stories and things like that. So um, anybody that can help us pivot out of that should be celebrated, because they are life changing, right? I mean, there's other people I could,
Right.
like I said, I could go down the list there, of people that have had a massive impact on me personally, over the years. So
What's also neat about what is that the fact you're a coach because at different points in my life I've always hired a coach.
mm,
Sometimes it was just because I wanted clarity. Sometimes
mhm,
it was kind of like there's something, some place like you talk about, like you said, I mentioned you were stuck and you wanted to get beyond that stuckness. But
mhm,
I found that coaches are invaluable to, if they do it well.
mhm.
I had a couple coaches who I end up coaching them when they're supposed to be coaching me, but
Sure.
when they do it well, it's drawing out of you what the
Interesting.
next phase of life is.
Right, right. I mean, I think those are the best conversations, right, between coaches, or not. Those are the best conversations that you can have with coaches when it's not a kind of one-way broadcast, right? Or it's not
Right.
letting you, sort of straggle and be left left alone for a long time. It's really when they can have an impactful conversation. I think I love that, the idea of conversation, because coaches shouldn't be seen as, I don't know, I'm better than you, or in some sort of power position. It's just a sounding board. And you're right. If the coach is well trained and well informed and knows what they're doing, then they can provide a lot of clarity for you, especially at sort of kind of key pivot points and intersections in your life. And look, it's only getting harder out there, right? So,
Right.
um, yeah, good for you. Good for you for hiring a coach. Here's a pitch. Hire me.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
There you go. No, I like that. So I only touched on your story when I introduced you. Kind
Yeah.
of give us your back. Give us the backstory.
Sure, sure. I kind of see my life in three chapters. The first chapter was very much about sort of the traditional trappings of success, right? So have this and do this and be that, and then you're going to be happy and fulfilled, right? And that sort of worked until I was about 35, and I achieved all of those things that were on that list, and felt very, what's the word? Just felt very empty and unfulfilled, and sort of life without meaning. And I was very ambitious back then, ambitious towards a destination of quote unquote success. And it was amazing. I mean, I traveled the world and went to incredible places, and by every standard I was living an incredible life in Switzerland and in Canada and internationally. And I really woke up one day. It was sort of about 2001, and I said to myself, all of these things that I've been working for 15 years are unfulfilling. They're not. They're all external. They're all material. They're all well, everything that we're kind of taught, right? That we're supposed to have and do and be and act and perform and et cetera, et cetera. And if you do all of that, then your life is going to be fulfilled, right? Well, mine wasn't. So I made a big pivot at that point, and I had a bit of a sort of a spiritual awakening that day, actually, and just quit everything, gave everything away, decided to move back to a place. I was living in Switzerland and I was in banking at the time, and you know, pardon me for that, but forgive me for that, I should say. But like, I got into something that I felt was much more rewarding, and so I spent the last 20 years in international real estate and international development, and I loved it. I mean, it was lots of travel, lots of incredible people, and like I said in my bio, I've kind of been there and seen that all around the world. But there was something still inside of me in that chapter two that really wasn't, what's the word? I really still wasn't feeling totally aligned to my purpose in life and my mission and why I'm here. And I have to tell you, Keith, that really now is what I've realized in chapter three. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What's my mission really? So for anybody out there that's kind of seeking and striving and wondering, don't give up, because you can have your life can be made up of multiple chapters, multiple storylines, and it might just take two or three to chapters like mine to get to the right place.
I love that. So knowing it, you're in this third chapter of your life.
Yeah,
This question is probably really relevant for you. So what is your why now?
you're right. My why is I and I don't know quite how I got to this. Again, I think it's divine intervention or something, but I know that I'm here. I'm on a mission to help people rediscover their humanity, to live in integrity, to become fearless and free. Now, all of those are interconnected, right? And by humanity, rediscovering your humanity, um, I mean, it's essentially as the label describes it. But what that means is if we remember that we're all human beings on this little planet, flying through the galaxy, spinning on its axle at 1,600 kilometers an hour, I think we would have more peace and more joy and more love and more connection and more community and more um, of all the things that make us humans so wonderful, and less of the things that um, we don't have to dwell on them, but toxins in food and war and homelessness and addiction and all of those things that are so challenging for so many people today. So find your humanity so that we can live together on this little rock as one, right? And let's turn down this idea of individualization that is so current today, and let's talk about humanity and community and connection and local, and local can have an impact globally, but um, yeah, so that's really step one in my mission. And integrity, living in integrity, and it means living in authenticity, so being who you really are, right? And again, I don't mean trying to distinguish yourself from everybody else, which is, I think, is so current these days. Everybody's got something, different and special. And I'm like, we're all one, right? Like, so I'm
Right.
fine with your pronouns, but let's come together and recognize that we're united. And if you live in authenticity and you live in integrity, it might be hard, right? The adjustment might be hard. You might lose friends, you might lose family members, you might quit a job, you might do something, but living in integrity really means bringing your power to the planet. And if you can bring your power to the planet, you can become fearless, right? And living and working without fear, I think, is an incredible, precious thing that we all deserve. And lastly, if you can connect with your humanity, live in integrity, be less fearful. And fearful, as you know, Keith, it comes up and it shows up in anxiety and depression and all of those challenges that we're having around health in our countries, yours and mine. And the last thing is freedom, and I mean freedom really from psychological suffering, right? We as a society, and you can see this, the evidence is kind of everywhere. Um, we are suffering. So humanity, integrity, freedom, and um, allows you to really become unlimited. So that's my mission as of um, I guess it's taken a couple of years to kind of figure it out in this chapter 3. But chapter 3 also involved moving away from Europe, coming back to Canada, settling in a very quiet place. I'm connected to nature and things like that. So um, I'm what's the word? I'm practicing what I preach, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, and you did that so succinctly that you connected all those and explained all those different pieces of where you're here and you now are.
Hmm.
We touched a little bit on at the beginning of this about coaching. And like I said,
Yeah.
there's many different forms of coaching. There's,
Hmm.
there's, I guess, there's lifestyle coaching.
Yeah.
What separates your concept of coaching from others in
Hmm.
your field?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. Of course, I think it's the experience that you bring to the table, right? That's kind of a given. Okay. Everybody brings their own journey and their experience and their stories to the table. And I guess because I've lived and played and worked and succeeded and failed in my life around the world, I bring a whole lot of experience to the table. But I suppose a lot of people could say that. I think the difference between what I'm doing and maybe sort of a traditional coach is I I really don't like to divide up coaching like that. Like you were saying, like a performance coach or a life coach
Right.
or a business coach, right? I think, I really think that's why we created whole human coaching, because we look at people holistically. Just because I think in today's culture, when you leave the office and you go home, it's so difficult, or vice versa, right? It's so difficult to divide up and parse up who we really are, right? So I think my difference and our team's difference is that we look at you much more holistically, and we also tend to push the boundaries of what is traditional coaching, right? So traditional coaching, as you probably know, it keeps you on sort of strict models, right? Which are fine, but I think life has become so complex, and humans that live in such a complex world, that you need to look at people much more holistically and kind of understand if there's trauma issues, small t or large t, and kind of understand if nutrition and diet is working, and you know what are the stories you're telling yourself in your head. So yeah, long answer to probably what should be an easy question, but I think it's a world of experience, and then the idea of looking at people holistically. That that yes, if we're doing leadership coaching, or if we're doing coaching for a CEO or an executive, um, you can't just sort of surgically only look at the office or only look at home life. They're all interconnected, I think, today. So that's really, I guess, not I guess, that's the difference between myself and somebody else, I guess.
I was a
I just said, I
certified
guess,
coach too.
twice.
And it's interesting because you're
Mm,
right. You can't just pick apart one section. Let me just coach you on your profession without realizing that
yeah.
they're all connected somehow. I think the shift I've seen that I've noticed in the last 10 years in coaching is this idea of the holistic coaching.
Mm,
And you
right.
don't parse your life because you can't parse your life in real life. I mean, I would love to just say, okay, right now I'm just going to be a husband. I'm just going to
Right.
be a father. I'm just going to be
Yeah.
a pastor. But
Hmm.
all those things connect, and they go back to what your original point. They're part of your authentic self. If you
Right.
deny any of those pieces to say those are not related, then you're ignoring who you really are and different hats that you get a chance to wear. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I mean, I think parsing it up and subdividing it leaves room for missing things, right? If you're only focused on somebody's life, and yet, most of their challenges or stress are coming from work or other factors, you need to dive into that. That's and that's why we say, go in, find the stories that you're telling yourself in your head, and deconstruct them to build new ones. But you can't do that saying, "Oh, I'm only going to focus on your office work or life coaching, for example." So yeah, it's got to be wider,
Exactly.
holistic.
Exactly.
We're, we're complicated machines. I think in the United States you have 40. Is it the body is like doctors have 41 different specialties, right? So we're kind of like, let's look at the whole thing, not the subdivided subsets. So that's
Exactly.
the
Right.
difference.
I
Yeah.
one of the beautiful things about coaching is you have to ask powerful questions.
Hmm.
And so if you're helping someone to define their purpose and their mission, maybe they're coming to you because they're stuck. What are
Hmm.
some examples of some powerful questions you might ask someone to help them discover what is their purpose or refine what their purpose and mission are?
Yeah, typically if somebody is stuck, I tend to, pardon the pun, but I tend to stay there, right? Um, and the work to do is to discover the stories that you're telling yourself to get to that stuck moment, right? So the I guess it's more than one question. It's, what are you saying to yourself? What is your belief system? What are your self-limiting beliefs? What are you telling yourself, you know, 20,000 times a day? Because so often people get stuck because of a whole series of storytelling that's going on in their head, right? I can't do
Mm.
this, I can't do this, even if it's very subtle. Oh, they won't do, no. So uh, all these things happen, and so for me, getting to unstuck, and actually we have a podcast called Getting to Unstuck, is all about is all about deconstructing the narratives that are going on in your head. And you know we're such strange things. We carry these stories for lifetimes sometimes, right? And then you get to this point where you get stuck, and then the stuckness turns into dis-ease. And that, I don't mean, you know terrible diseases, but lack of, just not feeling right, feeling off center, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's not so much, let's design your future, and we do that, right? But the first thing to do to get unstuck is to do an inventory of how you got to here, right? How you got to this point, right? And then for me, is okay, this is where you're at, that you got here, those are the stories that you've been telling yourself. Which ones are true, right? Which ones are serving you? And so often, if you do a little bit of this inventory, you discover that most of them aren't true. Most of them are just stories from the past that you might hold on to and have clung on to for dear life, right? Because that familiarity, notwithstanding, it might not be serving you, but the familiarity of those stories keeps you in those closed loops. So before we do any sort of purpose, mission-driven work, it's where are you now? Yeah. Well, again, if you can do this indexing and identification or inventory, the stories, right? The stories come from those moments of trauma, and they don't have to be big T trauma, right? They could be small T stuff, like you were maybe bullied when you were in school, or that's big, but it might be a divorce. So all of these things that we might consider normal, right, quote unquote, that don't get resolved can take you through a life. And I use this metaphor of you are looking at life through opaque lenses, right? It's like having four sets of glasses on that are all opaque. You can't see clearly. So to me, the work at hand is inventorying those stories and then going and finding out what is the origin of that story. And so often we're not taught this, right? We're not taught to look at our belief system and look at our narratives and stories and figure out where the origin story comes from. And so often, if you can work through with somebody, what is the origin story of that particular belief, right? You have these aha moments where I think you just disappeared. Just me. Oh, wait, there you are. I thought it was something I said. That's all right. It's all right. It happens. Great. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so I think once you've done the inventory of the stories and the narratives, right, and the belief systems, right, and you go in to each one, it's got to be really specific, right? This is like designing a house. Like the blueprints need to be very accurate, right? So what I do with people is we inventory the beliefs and the systems and the stories and everything like that. Then we look at each one and we ask the question, is that story serving you? Or the first question, sorry, is the origin story. What's the origin of that story? Okay, I've identified, I know where that's coming from. The third thing to do is I just said it, is to ask yourself, if it's serving you or if it's not, right? Because some things from the past might serve you, okay? But most of it doesn't. So it's not simple, but it is a recognition that the certain stories that you're telling yourself from the past, you discover the origin story, where they came from, and you ask yourself if they're serving you today. 99% of the time, most of them aren't. So then the job to do is to reconstruct new narratives and new storylines, right? It's the story of your life. What do you want the next chapter to look like? And that's where you begin to design it, right? Much like an architect or a sailor charting his course or her course to a new destination. You want it to be very, very intentional, right? And just like an architect or just like a sailboat, to get to that point, you need very specific coordinates and you need a plan. And that's what I work on with people that might be telling themselves self-limiting beliefs and restrictive stories, and that keep you in that loop, right? In that closed circle. Oh, I'm just going to stay here. I know it. Bang, it's familiar. Oh, I know that story. It's familiar, but they keep you locked in. And that goes back to that first question of mine of my mission. It's like if you can free yourself from this psychological suffering, from those stories, right? What are the possibilities? And that's the last question that I ask people, right? And this is where the spark comes. It's like how, and if you use a metaphor of a fuel tank, right? How much fuel were you spending on those old stories keeping you down, right? How much energy could you have if you got rid of those stories? What are the possibilities? What's the potential? It's really unlimited, right? So that's the nut to crack with people, and that's the work that we do. Oh, yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yes. Right. Sure. 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 So the first thing to do is turn off the news, right? And but there's an and there, right? It's turn off the news and get informed. Okay. That might seem like a dichotomy, or that doesn't work, but then you have to recognize that things like the news are a product, right? They're a product for you to consume. Okay. When I say turn off that and get informed, I mean get really informed about what matters to you as a human being, and what matters to you right outside your front door, down the street, I don't know, in the ministry, or however you're engaged with your local community, right? I was actually having a conversation about this with a colleague of mine recently who was you know having a hard time with what's going on in the world, right? I mean, like you say, you just have to turn on the news, and it's shocking what's happening, not just in the Middle East but everywhere. And I said to her, you know, healing, insanity, and sense making start when you turn that off, get really informed, like study, read history, geopolitics, understand what's going on in the world, because sense making today in 2024 is really is a challenge, right? As you know, there's right and wrong and left and up and down, and you kind of don't know which way to look. So um very poorly articulated answer here. What I'm really trying to say is, um it's about reclaiming your power, actually, right? So turning off the news, getting informed, be informed about what you need to be informed on, and recognize and understand that healing the world starts right here with you, right? And healing society and culture and everything, and even the climate and the environment, it starts with you. And it's an intentional, I call it creating a personal protection system, right? Like it's almost like having your own kryptonite security system around you. And the way to do that is to have a very clear idea of where you're going in the world, right? So we call it your personal and professional toolkit, your leadership toolkit. Understand what your personal brand is, and that's connected to your purpose and meaning and why you're here, right? And the third element of that sort of tripod of personal protection is to sense make in the world, and to understand how it all actually works. And there's long form podcasts, and there's books and journals and Substack. The interesting thing, or the positive element of the internet and social media, is that now you and I can be as informed as anyone, any journalist, around the world. So it is creating those foundations of destination and toolkit and personal branding and sense making that will allow you to have a firm grounding in this world. Because you're right, it is complex, it's crazy, and but at the same time, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of people that are doing good. There's a lot happening around innovations and technology in the future that are all extremely positive, right? So and there's great resources out there for not sitting and doom scrolling all day. There was a great video, I'll send it to you, that I saw recently. It was like the antidote to the doom and gloom, and it was it's on YouTube, but five futurists, so people that are looking at trends and mega trends in the future, and they're really positive. So I guess long answer short, pull yourself back, pull away from the junk food, right? And I don't mean just the McDonald's. I mean, pull away from the junk food that you're consuming, right? And get enriched. And that'll give you a solid, a much more solid foundation to deal with the scary stuff. Yeah. It's really just expanding my mission, And it took me until I was in my 50s to figure it out. And that's why I'm on it, because I think, you don't have to wait as long as I do. You don't have to go through 3 chapters like I did. You don't have to be divorced and bankrupt and depressed. And, you don't have to go through all of that, right? There's I mean, maybe you have to, but I'm just trying to accelerate people's sense of self and place in this world. So that's all I want to do, is just keep expanding that. Yeah. Oh God, that is that's a good one. I just want to be able to impact and change as many people's lives as possible. So, at Whole Human Coaching, we're creating a movement. We're creating a movement about bringing humanity back into the workplace, and bringing humanity back into the house and the play place, and we're that's what I'd like to be known for and remembered for. That I and my colleagues and friends and associates and people like you that we're working with, that we change the world to make it a better place, make it human-centric and not, sort of corporate centric, and the individualization that's happened over time, and the divisiveness and the division that's happened. I want to bring it all back to a different time. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. And Keith, I think it feels as though there is an awakening. I don't know about you, but just, I was on 50 podcasts last year, and they're I mean, that's just so brilliant that there's thousands of people out there like you and me, just wanting this place to be a better place to live on. I mean, it's a little rock flying through the galaxy. Let's get with the program. Unless Elon Musk accelerates things, we're not going to Mars anytime soon. So let's make this place as best we can. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, right. It's going to be a while. So make the best of this. Is what I say. Yeah. Yeah. Just, you can find me on Instagram, just Colin Kingsmill, or at colinkingsmill.com, or at wholehumancoaching.com. Whole Human Coaching is where we work with teams and leaders and help people rethink and reimagine the workplace and the workforce. And in my coaching business, I work with CEOs and founders and people that are trying to make the world a different place. So I'm easily findable. You can't miss me. Type me up. Look me up. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. And current bankers and there's there's lots of room for improvement. Let's just say that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We can do this. It does not have to be like this. That is my last sort of message to everybody in your audience. It doesn't have to be like this. But you need to break out of the old mold. Thank you so much. Same to you. Looking forward to seeing you again sometime. Oh, thank you.